Hey guys, welcome back. If you're new here, my name is Becca and today I'm going to be sharing with you some books that I would very much like to read before the end of 2020. So this is kind of a TBR video. However, I have 17 books to talk to you guys about today, and I know for a fact that I'm not going to read all of these books before the end of the year. One of the reasons for that is, as you guys know, I have very minimal control over what I read in a month, and it's actually not possible for me to read all of these books. I was going to cap this at 10, which is what I usually do when I make a video that's kind of like this. However, I wrote down all of the books that I had to / wanted to read for some reason in the rest of 2020, and we ended up with 17. Some of these, there are very specific reasons why I would like to read them before the end of 2020 that does not really have anything to do with personal desire to actually read the book. I will be explaining those reasons as I go through this video. However, some of these books are for a secret TBR that I started in June, and in the nature of keeping that TBR secret, I will not be telling you which of the books from this video are the ones I still need to read for that secret TBR, which honestly I don't even know when that video is going to be done at this point. I've had 2 haircuts since I started that video, so when you finally do see it, it's going to be a wild ride. It's not even like I can hide the fact that it took me so long to film it, but it is still a video that I would very much like to bring to you guys. So onto the books. The first section we're going to go through is the books that I have currently reading on Goodreads that have been there for a considerable amount of time. The one book in this video that I actually really don't want to read, however I do really want it off my Goodreads currently reading, is The Books of Earthsea by Ursula K. Le Guin. I was a co-host for the Le Guin Along, which was hosted by Ashley from A Frolic Through Fiction, but we all just deeply disliked these books. There were things that I liked about it, like this is a classic fantasy series. It's a children's fantasy series, or like a young adult fantasy series. All of the books in this series were written many years apart and they all follow different characters, but the first book, The Wizard of Earthsea, follows a boy called Ged who is particularly gifted in magic, so he ends up going to a wizard school where he accidentally unleashes a beast that he spends a lot of his life then trying to track down. So this is still in my currently reading on Goodreads because I think we only read the first 3 books out of here, and this has the entire series in it. So I think there's 6 books in total. I have read 3. However, this section is what I've already read, and this is what I have to read, which is larger. I want this off my Goodreads, which means I have to read 3 books in here. While the books are only, I think the biggest one is 400 pages, but the rest are like 200 pages. Reading this takes a long time. It is honestly painful to read just because it is so slow. I don't know what to do about this. I may try and read at least one more section of this year, but yeah, I do want to have read this. Like, I want to finish this series because it is like a fantasy staple, and it is one of the series that fantasy has grown from. So in this series there are tropes that we see for the first time in fantasy that are now a popular staple of the fantasy genre. I just don't particularly enjoy reading this. Like, I understand its merit, just it's not my thing, but I would like to get through it. We then have King of Sword and Sky by C.L. Wilson. This is the 3rd book in the Tyre and Sword series, which is a fae fantasy romance about a fae king called Rain who is trying to save his people because his people are tied to this big winged cat, and when all of the cats die out, the fae will die out, and the cats are very sickly at the minute. So while he is doing this, he stumbles across a young mortal girl called Elisetta who turns out to be his soulmate, and a lot of this plot like hinges on a 1,000-year-old war between the fae and the mages. So I enjoyed the first 2 books in this series. I was enjoying the 3rd one, and I was reading it for one of the rounds of Readathon. I got 145 pages into this and then put it down for some reason and then never picked it back up. I do still want to read this. At this point I think I could just continue because I actually do remember exactly where I left this. I think trying to read it over 24 hours is what did me in with this book, because it is 450-ish pages, and while it's not dense, it is a little bit slow. So I think I'm just a little bit scarred from my experience of trying to read this in 24 hours, which has put me off picking it up just to finish it off. The last one that I have as currently reading on Goodreads, I'm hopefully going to make some progress on in November, because that is the first volume of Oz the Complete Collection. So this is the first 3 books in the Oz series. It contains The Wonderful Wizard of Oz, The Marvelous Land of Oz, and Ozma of Oz. November is the month of Believathon, and I do have The Marvelous Land of Oz on my TBR. I think I actually read The Wizard of Oz the same readathon that I started reading King of Sword and Sky, and it honestly only took me a couple of hours to read The Wizard of Oz. So this won't actually take me long when I do get around to reading it. I'm actually hoping in the month of November I can read both The Marvelous Land of Oz and Ozma of Oz, but I don't know, because I could just stop after The Marvelous Land of Oz and not continue. If so, you definitely want to fit this in before December, because not only is it just a book that's sat on my currently reading, it's also one that really won't take me too long to read. I don't actually know what The Marvelous Land of Oz or Ozma of Oz are about. The Wizard of Oz is obviously the children's classic story that the movie and countless adaptations have been based on. It follows a girl called Dorothy who gets swept up in a tornado and deposited in the land of Oz, where she must follow the yellow brick road to get to the Emerald City and find the Wizard of Oz, who she is hoping will be able to help her find her way back home. I think Dorothy does make a reappearance in some of the later stories in the series, but I have no idea which ones, and like I said, I don't really know what the other stories in the series are about. Next up, we are going to go through 5 books by the same author, that is Brandon Sanderson. 2 of them I'm like 99% sure I will manage to read before the end of the year. 1 of them, there is a good chance that I will have finished it by the end of the year, and the other 2, honestly, I don't have a hope in hell, but I desperately do want to read them. The ones that I definitely think I'm going to read are Oathbringer Parts 1 and 2. So these are both half of the 3rd book in the Stormlight archive, which is a very expansive adult epic fantasy series that is set in Brandon Sanderson's Cosmere, and it follows a war that is set somewhere called the Shattered Plains, which is a series of plateaus. This is a multi-perspective fantasy, so the majority of the perspectives that we follow do surround one half of this war, and the war started because the Parshendi, who are the bad guys, orchestrated the assassination of the Alethi king. So the Alethi, which is the side of the war where we follow the majority of perspectives and people surrounding people who are involved in the war, they have started a war against the Parshendi as revenge for the assassination of their king. Now, I am a co-host for the Stormlight read-along. These are the books that I'm going to be reading in November. I anticipate that I will read half of it in November and finish the second half up in the beginning of December. So I do think I'm definitely going to get through these. However, the book that we have scheduled for December is one that is not currently out. That one is The Rhythm of War. It is book 4. It is over 1,000 pages. Because it is a brand new release, I won't be able to get it in these editions, so it will just be like one 1,000 page plus brick, with it not being in split editions and with it being the December book club book. I do think that I'm going to end up finishing that in January, but hopefully I'll at least make a start in 2020. The other 2 Sanderson that I have are ones that I'm just not going to be able to get to these this year. It makes me really sad, but they are ones that I desperately want to read, and that is The Well of Ascension and The Hero of Ages. I would love to just be able to read at least The Well of Ascension, but I just don't think it's going to happen. These are books 2 and 3 of the first era of Mistborn, which is one of the earlier series in Brandon Sanderson's Cosmere. These ones follow a man called Kelsia and a girl called Vin, who are Mistborn. In this world, the magic system is defined by metal, so a lot of people can't use the magic. The most common magic users are ones who can ingest one type of metal and use the power that metal gives them, and Mistborns can use all of the metal. So the storyline in this is that Kelsia is bringing together a band of Alamancer criminals to take down the Dark Lord, who has been in power for over 1,000 years. The first book in this series was my second favorite book of the year. I really loved it, but I haven't had time to get to the second 2 books, and I know that if I read them they'd probably take me a week, because this one is 800 pages and this one is just over 700 pages, but they're just so compelling and I love them so much that they really wouldn't take me long, and I really wish that I'd actually fit them in at the beginning of the year, because now I know there's no chance I'm going to be able to read them this year. The next 3 I have, I think, are all 2020 releases, and I know that I'm not going to get to all of them by the end of the year, but I just want to get to one of this 3 because they all do have something in common. They are young adult sequels. I have read the first book in all of these series and I would like to continue with them because something that I keep doing is reading, especially young adult books, as soon as they're released, and then by the time the sequel's released I just don't continue on with them. So the first one is Ruthless Gods by Emily A. Duncan. This is the sequel to Wicked Saints, which follows a girl called Nadia, and she is a cleric. Now most clerics can only speak to one god, however she speaks to multiple, and that is how she gets her power. Her country is at war with a country of blood mages, and we have 2 other perspectives in here that are from the blood mage country. We have Malachias, who has run away from some like secret government organization, and we also have Seraphine, who is the prince of the country. This is a very morally grey series. None of these characters are necessarily in the right, and neither of the countries are necessarily in the right. It's just kind of like a conflict of beliefs. I didn't love the first book, but I did enjoy a lot of it. I really liked the characters and I thought there was quite a lot of potential in here, so I would like to read this one sometime soon. We then have Blood and Honey by Shelby McHurin, which is the sequel to Serpent and Dove. Serpent and Dove is the story of Louise and Reed. Louise is a witch and Reed is a witch hunter. Lou has run away from her coven and is living her life as a thief on the streets of medieval France, and she gets into an altercation with Reed, which means that they are forced to be married by the Archbishop. Reed doesn't know that Lou is a witch, but she is very aware that he is a witch hunter, and it is about challenging beliefs and the things that they've grown up knowing about each other's factions, which are not necessarily true to individual people. It's a fantasy romance. I really enjoyed Serpent and Dove, and I would really like to get to Blood and Honey. And the last of these 3 is Deck of Omens by Christine Lynn Herman. This is the sequel to The Devouring Grey. This one is a contemporary fantasy that is set in a town in New York State, and it is about a girl called Violet who moves back to her mother's hometown and finds out that her family is one of the founding families of the town. The founding families in here have the responsibility of holding back the Grey, which is this alternate dimension where a beast lives, and each of the founding families have a specific type of magic that manifests in different ways with each individual of the family. So it is about Violet discovering her powers, learning her limits, and taking her place, I guess, in the history of this town and overcoming the complications that they're having at the moment, where they are struggling with each year, each generation, to continue to hold back the Grey. I was surprised by how much I love The Devouring Grey. I think that it's very atmospheric and I did really enjoy a lot of it. I wasn't sure going into it whether I was going to, and I do really want to read The Deck of Omens, especially as this is a duology. So if I read this, not only will I be continuing on with the series, I will be done with the series. So ideally of the 3, I probably would like to finish this one because then like I don't need to worry about it next year. But regardless, hopefully, fingers crossed, one of these 3 will get done. And if young adult fantasy comes up in Bookopoly at the moment, I want to say if young adult fantasy comes up in Bookopoly for December, then I will pick one of these 3 and I will actually read it. But whether that happens or not is a different matter. And then the last section of this video are just books that I generally just really want to read by the end of 2020. The first one is Are These My Bazoomas I See Before Me by Louise Rennison. This is the final book in the Confessions of Georgie Nicholson series, which was my favorite series from childhood. I read all of them as they were coming out when I was a kid, and I never read the last book in this series. So since I think it's 2018, I have been rereading this series so that I can finally read this one. And in the summer, I got to the point where I've reread it all now and I just need to read this final book, and I still haven't done it. So this one, I want to say at this moment, will be my contemporary pick if contemporary comes up on Bookopoly in December. This is just the diary of a teenage girl. It's all told in diary entries, and it is just a coming of age story. So she's growing up, she's having arguments with her friends, she's going through puberty, she has quite a lot of boy problems, and I've been rediscovering the series as well because I've been listening to it in the audiobook format, which are all available on Scribd, and they are also all narrated by Louise Rennison, who passed away in 2016. And honestly, just the way these books are written, it is so great that it is Louise Rennison who actually narrates these, and I've been really enjoying the series that way. I think for this final one, I am going to read along while listening to the audiobook to make sure that I retain all of the information in here. But reading this book will be the end of an era, and I just need to, I'm a little bit nervous, you know, but I just need to suck it up and finally read this. We then have 2 books in the same series. The first one is Emperor of Evening Stars. The second one is the last book in the series, because this technically isn't an installment, which is Dark Harmony. Both of them are by Laura Thalassa. So this is the 2.5 installment. Dark Harmony is the third and final book in the Bargainer series. This is a smutty fantasy romance series. It follows a siren called Callie who has a string of black beads that go all the way up her arm, and each bead represents a debt that she owes to the Bargainer. Now, the first book is told in two timelines. We have Callie as a teenager when she's amassing all of these debts, and we have the present timeline where the Bargainer has come to collect all of these debts that Callie owes him. I really loved the first two books in this series. I absolutely love the Bargainer, Desmond Flynn. He is a fae male. He's wonderful. If you guys like Rhysand, would definitely recommend that you pick up this series. I just got a little bit carried away. Like, my TBR seems to have grown really big in the second half of this year, and I haven't managed to continue, even though this is super short. It is only 202 pages, so I could read this in a day. I just haven't. If I can't finish the whole series by the end of the year, I would like to read at least this novella. One that you guys keep recommending to me is From Blood and Ash by Jennifer L. Armentrout. Now, I have made a rule for myself that I'm not starting any new series for the rest of 2020 unless Bookopoly forces me to, but I've wanted to read this for a really long time, so I don't actually know too much about this. It is a fantasy romance series that you guys keep recommending to me. Apparently I'm really gonna love it. I do think I am as well. It is about a girl who is a maiden, and that means that she cannot be touched, she can't experience pleasure, and she can't be looked upon by anybody. And also it is about the guy who's guarding her. Yeah, the other character is a guy called Hawk, who is a golden-eyed guard honor bound to ensure her ascension. I only know the basics of this, but I do think I'm gonna really like it based on other people's reviews, and also that you guys keep telling me I'm gonna love it. So I would really like to get to this one, especially as the sequel has just been released and everybody says that's great as well. A little bit of a random one, I would like to read Shatter Me by Tahara Murphy, which is a series that I previously have not been too bothered about. This is about a girl called Juliet who, I think she kills people if she touches them, and I think there's a love triangle in here as well between, are they called Adam and Warner? Am I right? I may be a little bit wrong. I know one is called Warner. It's like a young adult fantasy series, but I do believe there is quite a lot of romance in there. It is something that I have decided recently that I would really like to read, and because it's short and young adult fantasy, I do think I could get through it quite quickly. It's one of those where I'm either going to hate it or I'm gonna be trash for it. I would really like to see which side of that I fall on. A book that has not been released yet that I will 100% be reading in 2020 is Deadly Dreams by KJ Sutton. This is the third book in the Fortuna Swan series, which is a fae romance. It's self-published, and it follows a girl called Fortuna Swan who is a nightmare, which means that she can make people believe that they are experiencing their worst nightmares by getting into their head, finding out what their fear is, and making them believe that they are experiencing it. Her brother went missing, I think a year prior to the start of the first book, and she pretty much just found no trace of him at all. One day, a very powerful female approaches her and says that he actually does know where her brother is, and he will take her directly to him, providing that she marries him. So yeah, it's a fairy romance between them two. It is very dramatic, very angsty. I love the character of Fortuna, and I like the fairy male Colith. We also have other characters in there that I love. This is being released on the 1st of December, and I am actually going to be hosting a live show with Kelsey, who is the author, on the 1st of December. Really excited to read this, and the way Restless Slumber ended, I'm desperate to get to Deadly Dreams. And then the final book I'm going to be talking about in this video is Daughter of the Blood by Anne Bishop. This is a reasonably old fantasy series. I believe that it is very problematic and has a ton of trigger warnings. It is a series that Sarah J Maas has said that she has been inspired by, and a series that she really does enjoy. I do believe that there is quite a lot of romance in this series, but not in the first book. It kind of kicks in later on in the series, and all I can remember about it off the top of my head is that it is about a very young girl who is a prophesized queen. I think she's a witch, and there is a prophecy surrounding her, and two separate forces are trying to manipulate her so that she goes one way or another, because the prophecy is not clear what role she's actually going to fulfill. So there you have it. Those are the 17 books that I would like to read by the end of 2020. I'm not going to get to all of these. I will be be surprised if I even get to half of them, but wishful thinking, you know. I feel like the end of 2020 has really crept up on us, especially with everything that is going on with the pandemic and the world. We're kind of in this weird limbo period where time is passing really quickly but also not passing at all, and it is a really odd feeling. But hopefully, while November is going to be very, very busy for me, hopefully December will be a little bit more chill over the festive period and I will get a lot of reading done. So please let me know down in the comments what books you would like to get to before the end of 2020. Let me know if any of the ones I want to get to are ones that you would also like to read before the end of the year. Aside from that, please don't forget to like this video if you liked it and subscribe if you wanna. If you head into my description box, you will find a link to my Goodreads, Instagram and Twitter if you'd like to follow me on any of those, as well as a link to my Bookish body butter and candle website, the Instagram for that, and a 10% off discount code. But that's it from me today, guys. Bye!
Oh, you bite your friend like chocolate. You say you will go where nobody knows, with guns hidden under our petticoats. We're never gonna quit it, no, we're never gonna quit it, no.